Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the PowerPlay Podcast. It's me, Jordan Shannon, and joined as always by Kieran Powell. How are you, Kai?
Not too bad. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad at all, thank you. Um, yeah, we've obviously been going over the games, in the first ODI, and we're just going to cover the second and the third in this episode now. So, looking back on the game on Sunday in Cardiff, would you see them as unlucky, or how would you sort of view it?
All right, I'm going to give an overall briefing, so give me 2 to 3 minutes here.
Far away?
Obviously, I think we started wrong by starting opening the batting with Joel Andrew.
Yep.
I think that obviously there are ways to blood and groom young players into international cricket. Opening the batting is a job separate and apart. That's different completely to pretty much any other skill in international cricket or in cricket on a whole. I think that Shai Hope needs to, um, I guess, look within himself and understand that for where the West Indies team is and what we're trying to do as a region in terms of qualifying for the next 50 over World Cup, our best chances lie with our best players getting as much time as possible in the crease. That means that he needs to go and open the batting. I think Shea Hope and Evan Lewis should be the opening pair going forward, obviously with Keacy Carty stabilizing the middle order now. So I think that's where we started wrong. Having said that, there was a big partnership with Casey and Brandon King, who got a good half century. Obviously, tried to
Yep.
push the game on, but got out in doing so.
Yep.
For me, I'd still think that Brandon King would be better served at number four as opposed to opening the batting. Casey getting his fourth international century in what's that, the third century in four matches.
Yep. And
Um,
he's fit.
Obviously, absolutely flying.
Yeah.
And then Shea coming in at number four. Again, running out of time and running out of
Yeah.
partners because he's not in the position that he should be. I also think that when Shea and Casey was building that partnership, Shea needed to probably be a bit more aggressive from the start of his innings,
Right.
given the
Okay.
fact that Casey was ticking along and cruising towards 100.
Yeah.
And the situation that the West Indies were in, we needed to sort of capitalize. I think at the 30 over mark, we were 170 for two.
Two. Yeah.
And generally, you want to double that score that you're at the
Yeah.
70 over mark. So I think that we were sort of 40, 50 runs short. And in the end, it's sort of told to be true that we lost the game um, with 2 to 3 overs to spare because of Joe Root getting 166 and batting through. So
Yeah.
you look at, for me, two things. I think that Shea needed to be a bit more aggressive at the start because Casey was cruising towards 100. But you also look at Casey getting out, just running past a straight ball. At
Very.
that point in time, after getting a century, he needed to go on and get 150,
Yeah.
160, as Joe Root did,
Yeah.
and anchor the innings right through so that the
Yeah.
other guys could be aggressive from the start straight through the rest of the innings.
Yeah.
From the bowling point of view, I think that, again, tactically, we missed a few opportunities. I think that Alzarri Joseph going forward is not going to be able to bowl as spell as any other bowler in the team. His 10 overs is going to have to be used strategically.
Yeah.
So he's an impact bowler. And so he's going to, I would rather Alzarri bowl 10 for 60, 70 on a daily basis and get 4 wickets,
Yeah. I'm gonna
as
say that.
opposed to him bowling 10 for 30 or 40
Yeah.
and getting 2 wickets, because he's the one that's the game changer. He's the one that has the ability to bowl 90 plus, make batters uncomfortable, and he bowls a lot of wicket taking deliveries.
Yeah.
So for me, he'd be bowling 2 to 3 overs in the power play, another 2 to 3 overs once another main batter comes in throughout
And
the
the
middle.
partnership breaker,
Yep, yep.
potentially.
He's always either bowling at a new batter that's an impact player for the opposition,
Yeah.
trying to get them early, or as a partnership breaker, and
Yeah.
then let's say 2 to 3 overs at the death.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
depending on how the game is going. Obviously, I thought that he was brought back into the attack a bit too late, and he was still able to make inroads. But again, as I said, it was too late. So the
Yeah.
game was already the game was already gone from the West Indies at that point in time. So
Yeah.
didn't really serve much purpose, but it just showed that we need some wicket takers through the middle overs as
100%. Yeah.
well, because I think that right now we have a lot of bowlers that aren't necessarily ODI type bowlers, if that makes sense. So the skills
You
required
mentioned
for
that lengthwise, haven't you? How they
yeah,
bat you.
yeah, the skill set required for limited overs cricket is not necessarily what comes naturally to some of these bowlers. So you look at a Rashid Khan, not a Rashid Khan, Adil Rashid, for
Yeah,
example. He's not necessarily as successful in Test match cricket, but because of his variety and his ability to build pressure in limited overs cricket, which is a different skill set altogether, he's become one of England's leading bowlers and leading wicket takers. So I
yeah,
think especially our spinners through the middle. We need wicket takers, but we need guys, fast bowlers as well, that can A, take new ball wickets, and B, bowl in the death and through the middle to get wickets as well. So, I mean, I think for me, Alzarri is one option. We need probably another two guys to go with him to complement him if we want to be competitive on a global stage, because I think that the batting unit for the West Indies is pretty much there or thereabouts if Sammy can have his full complement available to him.
yeah,
Because you look at the likes of a Sherf and Rutherford, and for me, someone needs to speak to and convince a Nicholas Puran to come back into 50 over cricket as well. So we can try and get that automatic qualification, because the impact these guys can have on a team holistically, and the destruction that they can cause the opposition is paramount to, I guess, what any of our bowling attacks would have to defend, because
yeah.
guys, oppositions will go into batting, whether they're batting first or batting second, knowing that they have some destructive players on the other end, and so push the scoring rate quicker and give you more opportunities of getting wickets as well.
Yeah, you know what? The way you summarize that second ODI is, I definitely agree with you. And obviously, before we jump on to the third, I wanted to, one thing I picked up on, and it goes to show international cricket is the fine margins. You look at the LBW decision against Joe Root, the situation with umpires call, the frustration. I get that, and there's always pros and cons in terms of umpires calls, and I get that. But it just goes to show those fine margins. That goes there. And then, in my opinion, it does change the game completely. It's that confidence that it would give a Matthew Ford as well, because he has been struggling and he goes and rips out a Joe Root and you think, fantastic, fair play to you. It's just those little fine margins at this moment in time, I feel, for West Indies.
Yeah, and I mean, for West Indies, from a West Indian perspective, I think they'd have much rather have gotten the Joe Root decision as out and the Will Jacks
Well, Jack,
decision as not
yeah,
out, as opposed to the other way around,
yeah, of
because
course,
obviously Joe Root is the one that can
of course.
and did have a significant impact
Yeah,
on the outcome of the game. I think they'd much rather take their chances with Will Jacks obviously not being as experienced and as
correct.
skilled
Yeah,
as a Giroud. Not saying that Will Jacks isn't a good player; he's a very good player as well. But
no,
if you're gonna pick apples and cherries here, obviously
correct.
Giroud is the one that you'd prefer to
Yeah,
get out 10 out of 10 times.
yeah, definitely. And I think that's exactly it, in terms of that. And like, at that point. In the game, it's what you want. And, the other plus point was the way that they started the innings. Taking those two early wickets, the lengths that they bowled was superb. They challenged the outside of the edge, which is what we spoke about. So there's obviously a positive from that side of things. Again, I don't want to critique Keacy Carty because the fact he got his century, but again, at that point there, you do want to come away with a 150 or 160, and but again, that's when it takes you to that next level from a team perspective. Is when a batter gets to 100 relatively, comfortably, and then they go big like Joe Root did in that situation. And obviously, highlighting again, obviously the Shai Hope opening thing. If he opens, in my opinion, he does score a comfortable century at that point.
Yes,
So
yes,
you know,
yes,
it is hard, and I did feel for Jewel Andrew really as well because, as you mentioned at the start, it's a skill in its own being able to open the baton in those situations. So a frustrating performance really because there were times in that game where I kind of felt that they need, it just needed that. I don't know I don't know how to put it into words really, but it just needed that bit of something extra, and it just didn't come. And I felt for Shea from a captaincy perspective in the second innings because when he made the changes, and I understand what you were saying in terms of bringing Alzarri on slightly late, but you kind of also got to back what's in in your attack as well at the same time. So it was a frustrating and a disappointing defeat, really. But there was still some plus points out there.
100%.
And in terms of obviously going into the third ODI, other than turning up late. Um, what did you make of that performance?
Well, I'm still currently dressed. I've literally just come from the ground to record this episode. I'd like to say, first of all, before I even get into that performance, thank you to my classmate and my schoolmate, Hugo Boylan. His company, True Entertainment, hosted my father-in-law and I in his corporate box at the Oval. So
Oh, fantastic.
very good running to lots of old schoolmates, lots of people in the business world here. Andy Carroll, the Liverpool footballer, not a Liverpool fan, obviously Man United, so that's a rivalry. But having people like that
Yeah.
in and around a setting is always a good thing. As well as lots of different people from the Caribbean, Shem Holder, Yannick Leonard, etc.
Oh,
in the
nice.
crowd. But for me, I think that from the start, you get to the ground late, you've started bad.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
the batters, obviously the early peers, obviously didn't really stand up, and I think that's been sort of I guess the highlight or the consistency of the tour in terms of not getting much up front,
No.
having to rely on, I guess, Shea and Keacy for the most part of this tour to do a
Yeah.
rebuilding act, and then hoping that the lower to middle order sort of pull off a good finishing job. Having said that, Casey and Sherfane put on a partnership and tried to, I guess, steady the ship a bit. Obviously, Casey dragged on a slow, loopy half volley
Yeah.
from Adil Rashid, which was against the run of play. But I think that you look at the way that Sherfane Rutherford played in his first ODI on the tour, obviously coming in from the IPL, you wonder what could have been if he was
Yeah.
here for the entire series. His quality and his skill set continues to shine throughout the early part of his ODI career. I think
Yeah.
he's played some 11 matches or something. No, it's not much,
No.
and he's probably got maybe 6 or 7 scores of 50 plus in ODI cricket already. So he's showing the experience he's gaining from
Yeah.
playing in these various T20 leagues, his quality, his superiority to, I guess, the stocks that the West Indies have. So it's very good to have the likes of him and the West Indies team. And then you look at the partnership that Gurkesh Moti and Alzarri Joseph
Yeah,
put on to,
fantastic.
to
Yeah.
get the West Indies up to 250. I mean, I thought that for the West Indies to be competitive, they would want to get to probably 270 to 80, obviously in a
Yeah.
40 over game, because at the end of the day, the English cricketers, this is their bread and butter 40 over
Shorties.
cricket. If you,
Yeah.
if you follow it carefully, they play the Royal London, which is a 40 over competition. So they know how to go about these types of chases, and the Oval is historically an amazing place for batting, a very small ground, and anything offline is going to disappear, as we saw pretty much at the end of the power play. I mean, 8 over
Yeah.
power play, England were 100 without loss, so you've literally lost the game there already inside of the power play. So um, I think for the West Indies, takeaways from this series, from my vantage point, are
Yeah.
obviously the opening partnership getting off to better starts so that the middle order can have something to build upon,
Yeah.
and the bowling attack. I think you need to obviously continue to work and develop these guys, but they need to harness, sorry,
Yeah.
their limited overs, their white ball bowling skills, as well as finding guys that are wicket takers, because in today's era of limited overs cricket, white ball cricket, you can't afford to just look to restrict guys anymore, because players are so destructive. Um, and if you just let guys continue to bat at what you may think is a reasonable rate, you're just allowing them to get
Yeah.
set for a big explosion at the end. So the West Indies need to find wicket takers through the middle, and wicket takers with the new ball, so that at the end of the innings, your death bowlers are bowling to 8, 9, 10,
Yeah.
11, as opposed to 3, 4, 5, 6 that
Yeah.
can do serious damage at that point in time.
Yeah. I just think, yeah, yeah, totally agree with you with the takeaways from the series, and I think that you mentioned there about Shafine Rutherford. massive impact in that because they're not going to play now. They don't play any ODIs now until they play Pakistan in August. And that's when you go again. We're speaking about this automatic promotion aspect. Sorry, the automatic into the World Cup. They've got to try that series now. For me, it's a massive series. You go and lose that again. You're chasing your tail really in terms of it from a performance perspective, and they've kind of got to take this series and look at what it's been like playing against England in terms of how they've started the innings and the way that England have played against the West Indies for me has been impressive in terms of how they've broken it down, how they've used Adil Rashid in the middle overs, how they've used the opening bowlers, how they've had that depth in the batting and allowed Root to go and do what you said at the very start, what Shea will do as well. Just hold that innings and just bat the way he will bat as a stroke player, and the rest will then go after it, around him really. So I'm kind of, I appreciate, the way we do it here when we speak about it, we give the analysis around it. We're not going to, we don't just throw criticism out there with no backing. And I think that that's the way that I'd see some of the positives out of this series. There is some positives out there, and there's no doubt. I've seen it. I've watched the games. I appreciate there's been some mistakes and there's been some issues and stuff that the team have got wrong, but ultimately there has been some positives out there. So I don't want it to sound like, when we're speaking, it's just not all negative because the way that Keacy Carty's been batting is a real highlight, and it goes to show that there's, the future that he has batting through for West Indies.
Well, I don't think we've actually said anything negative. I think
No,
we've
no, do you
been
know what? We
pretty
probably have,
much,
we
yeah.
haven't really. Yeah.
No, I think we've been all positive actually.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't want to sort of shed those aspersions as to we're being negative or anything like that. I think that what's also interesting to me is you look at the series. The fields that England have set,
Yeah.
generally they've gone with a deep cover, leaving extra cover open and a leg slip for most parts, and they've gone with deep backward square or deep forward square, sorry, and a fine leg. So
Yeah.
they've looked to bowl a lot of balls short into the body of our
Yeah.
players, and I'm trying to figure out. Obviously, there's a lot of analysis that would have gone into something like that. And I'd like to figure out as to why they went that route. And obviously, it's brought a lot of success for them, as well as the impact of Adil Rashid. We said at the beginning of the series, if West Indies are to win, Adil Rashid is to be kept quiet. He
Yeah.
needs to be getting probably 1 or 2 wickets max throughout his spells. I think
Yeah.
in the last 2 games he's gotten 8 wickets. So that has played a big part in terms of the success of England because he comes and rips through that middle order.
Yeah.
And so you can't necessarily advance the game as you'd like. So I think those are things that I've found as interesting draw points for the West Indies to
Yeah.
look at and analyze going forward.
Yeah.
Having said that, I think as you mentioned, positive from the entire series is Keacy Carty. His performance actually I actually called him out today when he's on the field. He looked up and he saw me, he's like, so no, it was such a I guess heartfelt moment for
Yeah.
myself, obviously knowing Casey from since he was 18 and then
Yeah. Yeah.
being able to call him out on the boundary playing international cricket, obviously knowing him from such a young age and to be able to see what he's doing now, it's absolutely amazing. And then, to hear the commentators talking about cricket in St. Martin, I wonder where they would have heard, something like that from. It seems
Not
interesting.
sure. I'm not
But
sure.
yeah, no, it's just there are positives, but the West Indies, I guess, as you said, they don't play ODI cricket again until next year, so they've got some time to, I guess, work on their combinations and what
Absolutely.
they're looking for.
Yeah.
Yep, strategies going
Yeah.
forward. So,
Yeah, I agree.
um, going to be very, very interesting. But the T20 players have arrived now, so we've got another, I guess, bit of interesting cricket to look forward to as well.
Yeah, definitely. Just quickly mentioning your point there, for anyone who hasn't listened to it so far, we really recommend that you listen to the episode with Akeem Charles, who's speaking about the infrastructure in cricket in St. Martin and the sort of levels that sort of Keacy Carty was and what he did to go and play cricket, which is a really lovely story. So I do recommend everyone gives that a listen because it was brilliant to get Akeem on the podcast. But the other thing as well I wanted to mention about changing, obviously, the go to Ireland. So I think it's the T20s and then they go to Ireland. But it's been mentioned, or it's been, sorry, named that obviously Roston and Darren Sammy and I think two more of the coaching team are going to go and head back to the Caribbean to prep for the Australia series. What was your take on that?
Well, I knew about it beforehand because obviously Emma manages Roston, and
Yeah,
Roston have told me this from since last week. I think what a lot of people have overshadowed is that Brandon King is also leaving,
yeah,
which is a clear giveaway that Brandon King is in the test team.
yeah,
And I think what a lot of people may not realize is that Shai Hope is in the test team, but the only reason he can't leave is because he's just been made the new T20 captain. So he can't leave as he's just gotten that. So I think it's good that I guess these guys get to go back and prepare for the Australian series because pretty much everything that the West Indies do right now is a fight for survival in terms of World Test Championship, starting a new
yeah,
cycle, Roston, new Test captain,
yeah,
wanting to be prepared and going into that as best as possible for
yeah,
your first Test match back in over 2 years. Brandon King, someone that's probably going to make his Test match debut at some point in time.
yeah,
I'm sure Shai Hope will be practicing with the red ball in between some of these white ball sessions to prepare himself going back to Test cricket again for someone that hasn't played, I think, in 4 years. So, it's very interesting the way that I guess the West Indies board has gone about it because you can't sort of take your eye off of the current series looking to
yeah,
the next series. You still need to keep a focus on that, and you can't take Ireland for granted because we saw what happened in the first match over there as well. So
yeah,
I'm
definitely.
sure Ireland won't be too happy with the West Indies sending guys away to prepare. But having said that, the team that is going to Ireland is still very experienced. You've got some very good players coming in for that series as well
Yeah,
that will want to be proving points. Guys like Rovman Powell that has just lost the captaincy, or someone
yeah.
like Jason Bowler that can't get into any other format at this point in time. So,
Yeah, I think like you said there, it gives some people an opportunity to stand up and perform and that's the way. But I think it is the right decision that they've made to do that because I felt like the 10 day. So I think it's 10 days between the first test and then the last one in Ireland. I just don't think it gives you enough time to get that preparation right, especially under this new cycle and under new captaincy. So as much as it might seem as taking the eye off the ball for the Ireland series, I just think they've had to make the executive decision to figure out a happy medium between them. So,
yeah,
but
100%.
we will we will discuss the Ireland T20 stuff as we have been doing, but we're also going to do one, aren't we, to discuss the Test squad for the series against Australia.
Yep. I'll be naming my test team tomorrow. So, for all our viewers that tune in today, also look out for our episode tomorrow naming our team that we predict is going to be selected for the test series coming up against Australia. And let's see how much of it we get right as opposed to what actually gets selected.
Yeah, I'll be yeah, I'll be intrigued to see what 11 you go with that, and then I'll be definitely intrigued to see where it ends up. But as we've been discussing previous on the other episodes, let us know what you think to how we've broken down the three games in the series, Karen's takeaways. And any questions for Karen, pop in the comments at YouTube, and Karen will kindly get back to your responses. We did sort of touch on it on the last episode as well. We will be doing a episode soon, which will be covering a Q&A, strictly just questions in terms of cricket in general that Karen will be answering. So keep an eye on our socials in terms of when that will be. But yeah, give us a shout, let us know. Like, subscribe, share. We do really appreciate all the love that we're getting at the minute. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, guys. Stay tuned, share, comment, like, subscribe.
Thank you very much, guys. Cheers.